Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, happy to be back on the show.
John, Bold Ventures released results for its Traxon Gold project. What did we learn?
Well, Jim, we last talked about Bold Ventures and its Traxon project on January 20th when I introduced this interesting news story, which is a 50-50 joint venture with the Lac Des Mille Lacs First Nation in Ontario. And the property had been owned or under option by Benton Resources in 2017-18. A prospector had found a high-grade gold showing on this shear structure that you can see from the regional geophysics, but which nobody had ever really done any work on. And when Benton dropped it, Bold Ventures was able to do a deal with the prospectors. That's a pretty reasonable deal. And they brought in the First Nations group as a partnership because this is their backyard. And so the First Nations group's actually paying 50% of the program. Now, the first program was not an expensive program. It was only 4 holes. And the goal was to test deeper the main zone, which has only a very short strike length that had been tested by Benton before they got distracted by something else. And 2 of the holes were pretty much duds. One gave a 1 meter of 5.46 gram per ton gold, but the 4th hole, that was the best one yet, and it yielded 12.29 meters of 3.57 gram per ton gold, which included an almost 5 meter interval of 6 grams per ton, and within that were a couple of short 0.73 and 0.9 meter intervals that were 10.5 and 15 grams per ton gold. Now, these are good high-grade numbers. What was important is that the high grade continues to be associated with certain sulfides within this system. And where there weren't the sulfides present, they did not get grade. The 2 holes that came up a very low grade. The issue here is that the zone has a northerly rake, so they basically missed the gold mineralized portion. Now, this thing is at the northern end of a 2-kilometer long, what they call conductive trend line, based on geophysical surveys that they've done. It's within a larger envelope of a resistivity high, which is due to the silicification, quartz flooding, and that, of course, itself does not have any mineralization. It's only within the structures where the sulfides piled up that the gold is present. So the company plans to go back and spend the summer doing lots of surface stripping and trenching along this 2-kilometer strike, in the middle of which is the teardrop zone, which had a short interval on 1 meter of 2.65 gram per ton gold that was never really followed up. And it is a 10 million ton footprint based on an approximate sort of 10 meter wide zone going down a couple hundred meters. So whatever the grade ends up averaging for this could end up being a sizable play. And we can't quite call it yet a discovery because we need further evidence that the mineralization does exist along this structure, but it is certainly an emerging discovery story that we will continue to watch. They hope to raise more flow-through money in the summer. Right now they're hoping to raise a hard dollar financing, not a few $100,000 to fund this summer work, which will be target development, and they hope by the fall to be ready to undertake a significant drilling program along this 2-kilometer segment of what ultimately is a 15-kilometer structure. The northern third is under Belvedere Lake, so nothing's going to happen there until they've demonstrated that this is a very juicy structure, and that drilling from ice in the winter, prospecting with a drill is the way to go. For now, it'll be the land-based portion that gets all the attention, and the conductor is what they believe to be where the sulfides have piled up, and it follows the strike of the shear structure itself. So it's an excellent target. We'll see what it looks like on surface in late summer. News flow in terms of drill assays. Well, there's none left to come, so we'll have to wait for that. The other project they're going to work on is the Farwell project that they have in the Wawa area. And this is just to the northwest where West Dome has the former Mishi pit and then the Eagle River mine, and where Angus Gold has assembled what it calls the Golden Sky project. The Farwell project actually ties on to the northwestern part of the Angus Gold's project. Angus Gold is behind the scenes as technical advisors are Jamie Sokalski and David Palmer from Probe Metals, which has the Val-d'Or project, where all its energies are going in. But Jamie and David are the biggest shareholders of this company. It recently raised some more money. It's got $5 million in the treasury, only about 37 million shares fully diluted. And this is one I may introduce as a Discovery Watch story later this year when I get my head more around what they think they are going to do with that area. But the Farwell is an extension of an iron formation zone that's seen a lot of work in the northeast, but very little in the Farwell area. There's potential for both Musselwhite style iron formation related gold systems in the northern part, and in the southern part there is a VMS zone that's seen some drilling in the past, and they plan to do some more geophysical surveys, and where the ground is not too squishy, do some surface stripping and trenching to see what's there, and also set that up for a drill program. They did get a drill permit included with all the other rights to go onto the property, so they're all set up with that. But the company right now is money challenged. It has only $100,000 working capital. Any effort they tried in the first quarter of this year to get some excitement going on the basis of the Traxon drill program, that ended up being dampened by one of the placees that they brought into the nickel financing they did last year with a warrant at a dime. That was Palisades Gold Corp, and true to their form, they liquidated their entire position during this period, so the market has had to digest several million shares as part of this clip and flip strategy. And I would suggest that companies that are being offered money from Palisade Gold Corp, keep in mind that in 4 months you will have to find a home for all that paper that this group has picked up, because it seems to be that their model is to do these financings and blow out the stock and build up a portfolio of free lunch warrants that they can talk about and hope that they get lucky with down the road. So Bold Ventures, the news was good, and it justifies continuing, and we will continue to monitor this company over the rest of this year, though we probably won't have anything more to say until the fall when they get drilling underway again.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, Opus One reported assay results for its Noyelle project. What was in it, and was it expected?
Well, Jim, we talked about the Noyelle project of Opus One on March 11th when they had about 3/4 of the program done. They had a pretty good idea of where the zones were going to run gold mineralization. There's a strong association with sulfides, where they see the sulfides with the silicification. That's where they're going to see the gold. And in fact, they were pretty accurate. The first 2 holes came up pretty disappointing in what they call Zone 1, and they had already pretty much outlined that based on the absence of the sulfides within the zone. But holes 4 to 6 came in pretty good. They ran from 4.5 grams per ton to 6 grams per ton over intervals of 2.7 to 6 2.5 meters. And these holes were all at the same depth, spaced about 50 meters apart. The third hole was over to the east of it, and it managed to deliver a 1 meter of 8 gram per ton. But in chatting with Pierre O'Dowd about what this all means, he thinks that in the eastern direction, this tabular body, it's losing the zone, that the direction is towards the west. And the last hole of the program, number 12, for which they do not yet have assays, they stepped 50 meters to the west of hole 4 to plug the gap from hole number 1 last year, which delivered a reasonably good interval. And they see, again, the sulfides over the widths that they're looking for. They're looking for a 4 to 10 meter thick system here. It's an orogenic system. They want it to go to dip down deep. They'll chase it deeper down the road. But for now, they're going to march west. They think there's something going wrong with the structure to the east, so they're probably not going to spend more effort on the main zone. They did drill one hole into what they call the east target. That's an IP anomaly that was left over from the previous operator when Pierre O'Dowd was involved, and they never got around to drilling it. The hole did not intersect anything that explains the chargeability high. So Pierre thinks the zone no longer dips to the south in this area, and with the angle of the hole that they drilled designed to intersect a south-dipping system, it just never reached the structure that has this. So they will have to revisit that down the road. And in the far east target, which they generated IP chargeability high last year, they drilled a couple holes. What disappointed them was that it did not intersect the style of sulfide mineralization in the back of the iron formation that constitutes Zone 1 in the main zone about 4 or 5 kilometers to the west. What they hit was sulfide mineralization in the same setting as what they call Zone 2, which is a lower grade zone. It's associated with graphitic sediments right up against the fault structure that runs east-west in this area. And the holes, the holes that they reported to also pass through Zone 2 to the north, and the grades were more in the sort of 0.5 gram to 3 gram per ton range, not really good enough to sustain an underground mining operation. But apparently they had decent intervals in this far east target. It is of this style. They have their fingers crossed that maybe the gold grades are different when you step farther east in this direction. But we will have to wait for the assays down the road. I think they were a little disappointed that the thicknesses of the gold grades was not at the high end of their expected range, and I don't think that they'll make an effort to permit building a road into the area. This will be a project that they return to next winter, resume drilling, hopefully fully financed. Today there was some interesting news in that the Kennebec project, which adjoins to the east of the Noyelle project, it was staked ages ago by a company called Chalice Gold, which was an ASX-listed company. And a year ago or so, they decided to pull out of Canada. They sold their assets to O3, Canadian assets to O3 Mining, decided to focus on their Australian prospect generation, made a fantastic platinum palladium group discovery at the Jumalar, and this company with 300 million shares out is now at $6, a $2 billion home run. Focusing back in Western Australia in this target that had been overlooked by all past explorers. Anyways, Tri-Origin Explorations, which has been a repeat Discovery Watch junior in the past, they recently did a reorganization, refinancing, management change. Osisko Mining and O3 Mining, they have become backers of the company. And so they sold this 30-kilometer package for 2.7 million shares. Most of its exploration was before 1995. There were about 47 drill holes drilled on this property package, and it's an elongated package which covers the Casa Berardi Douay Cameron deformation zone, which is also what the Noyelle property crosses through. And there's a geophysical survey being done on there now to pick out new targets. But with Tri-Origin, whose name is going to be changed in the next week or so, its priority is a different project. It's the Sky Lake project in Ontario in the Pickle Lake district. That's where they're going to be focusing. But this project, it boosts O3 mining stake to 10%, makes this company greater part of the Osisko fold. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with this extension of the deformation zone, where Opus 1 has demonstrated that yes, there's a gold system here. It's persistent and it's growing. It's not yet a giant system, but it will deserve further work. And while they can't return to this area until next January, they do have a permit and, what's becoming increasingly important, a drill contract for drilling the Fecteau project, which is in the Urban Berry area near Osisko Mining's Windfall project. So this company will not be lacking in terms of news flow during the summer. It's not go back to sleep. And incidentally, this company also spent most of the first quarter digesting the Palisade Gold Corp long position from the private placement where they clipped the warrant and flipped the stock and pounded it out, and they're sitting there with a big overhang of warrants. But at least the stock has been rotated into friendlier hands who aren't there just to do the old risk avoidance strategy that it has become quite common with Canadian investors who don't have the difference between long and short-term capital gains that American investors have. So Opus 1 is still on our discovery watch list, and there's some more results coming. Hopefully they confirm in that final hole that yes, the zone persists to the west with the same sort of strength or perhaps better, and the wild card to see what the far east sulfides end up having in terms of gold potential.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, SK Mining announced that it has defined multiple mineralized horizons at its SK project. What's that all about?
Well, Jim, it seemed like the press release was telling us something new, but in fact, this was already all figured out in that March 3rd webinar that John DeDecker did that you can view on YouTube. It's 1 hour and 22 minutes long. It's excellent. I finally got around to watching it last night. If you are an SK Mining shareholder and are wondering, could the stock going to hold here and go higher? Is it going to find the SK Creek 2? It is well worth your while to watch this entire presentation in which John DeDecker explains their reinterpretation of the architecture of that whole property, which is now 100% owned. He walks through the different stratigraphy in there and where they expect to, find the mineralized horizons. Yesterday's press release basically said that we have now defined 6 formations on this property that are mineralized, all the way from the contact mudstone. The contact mudstone hasn't actually been found on the property yet, but it clearly projects onto the property because that's in the western part of the Skeena property to the north, which hosts the 21B zone, which sits in the contact mudstone just beneath a basalt horizon. Above the basalt horizon, we get the Bowser Lake sediments. They got laid down after all the volcanic mineralizing activity ceased, and the Bowser sediments ended up being thrusted from the west. The big thing that one needs to take away from the work that John DeDecker, Thomas Monarchy, and Quentin Henney did in the past year was to recognize that the Coulter Creek thrust fault is not coming from the east, riding over rocks to the west. It's actually a series of thrust faults coming from the west, pushing rocks over in an easterly direction, but also in the process taking what was originally a stratigraphic layer cake, alternating between volcanic flows and then quiet submarine periods where mudstone horizons built up, and during which smokers from the hydrothermal systems, circulating the seawater through the basin and then up through these vents and depositing mineralization in stringer zones, and then ideally in those VMS massive sulfide pancakes that are enriched not just in base metals, but in this setting here in gold and silver. There is a whole series of these stacked on top of each other, and they've been folded into three anticlines. The main one is the SK anticline, whose spine goes right through the middle of the property. The top of the fold is, of course, gone in this area, so you see the layer cake on its side, dipping off to the east and dipping off to the west. And all this work they did has really given them a great understanding of what's happening. Some interesting things emerged also from a BLEG program that Quentin Henney wanted done, and this involves not stream sediment sampling, but actually sampling the clay particles and looking for gold that has been dissolved into water, but that's absorbed back onto the clay particles. And this is all about water flow. And when you're going in rugged terrain such as this, the topography can really distort where you get your gold and soil anomalies. But this method here, where there's water, gold dissolved in water flowing over the clay particles, it helps identify areas where there is repeated exposure to this sort of gold in solution. And what's fascinating about the BLEG study that they reported a couple of weeks ago is that at the southern part where the C10 and the GFG targets are located, there is a very significant BLEG anomaly. But even more interesting, in the eastern anticline, on which there hasn't been really any work done, in the northern part of it, there is a very intense anomaly. So they will be starting a 30,000 meter drill program in June, and they've got $14 million in the treasury to fund this. This entire play, with all the work they've done reconstructing the geology, the stratigraphy, accumulating all these data sets. Now when you go there with a drill rig and you start beefing this up with more data within your leapfrog models, this becomes this giant detective game, because there's clearly evidence that the gold mineralizing fluids have passed through the entire stratigraphic set. They have 6 of these. They repeat in the different limbs of the anticlines, and it's going to be just a matter of time before they track down a vent. And in John DeDecker's webinar, he made an interesting comment about the 21B zone, which is the mound that forms at the vent of a smoker system. It has never been found at the 21B zone. So this 2.5 million ton deposit is actually a debris flow. It flowed away from the source where it came out. So the type of place where you could find a substantially bigger accumulation of gold and silver enriched massive sulfides with base metal credits, that has not been found in this region. But the evidence of all this mineralization over this 25-kilometer strike of the now 100% SIB property. Imagine if the 21B zone was discovered last week and you had really known nothing about the area to the south, and all of a sudden you have all this evidence that this is just as fertile and interesting as were the 21B zone. Never mind that $40 million plus were spent since SK Creek 1 was discovered. None of it was really ever put together in the kind of geological context and framework that has now been done. And so they have a very strong case that it's just a matter of time and money before they find out where one or more other SK Creek style deposits are present. And even if they fail at finding the mound with the massive sulfide lens in the style of 21B zone, all these other units, the mudstone units that soaked up the gold and silver mineralization as the hydrothermal fluids circulated through them on the way to whatever what was the surface at the time, all of these themselves could end up turning into a whole series of deposits which collectively could make this thing just as valuable as SK Creek 1. And I recommend again, go to the company's website, click on the John DeDecker webinar from March 3rd. They did a new webinar yesterday through this Toronto Geological Discussion Group, but replays of that are only available to members. But go see the John DeDecker presentation, and you'll also get a VMS 101 system education out of the process. It's really important to understand the VMS model and why this project this summer is going to be the most exciting Golden Triangle exploration play this year.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.